This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 2.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majnaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. When we talk about sales and sales engineering, there's another totally different aspect to it, which is from the other side, from the customer side. And I'm not talking about the CSOs or the users or the managers. I'm talking about procurement. Procurement is a difficult animal which sales engineers tend to not want to deal with. We never want to deal with procurement. As a salesperson, we'd rather bypass procurement. If my users are happy, if my customers are happy, I want to bypass them. So when I talked to my guest today, he basically discusses the fact that he used to work in procurement and how that opened up his eyes to what sales engineers do, and how the terminology is similar but flipped. So, by the way, my guest is Wesley Bellman, and that's one of the many topics that we're going to discuss today. I hope you enjoy the show, and let's jump in. What's up, Wesley Bellman? Bellman?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It seems that I've been doing that recently a lot. I say someone's last name and then I think, did I say it right? So I'm glad I did. How you doing?
Outstanding. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And did I lose you?
Nope.
Nope, you're still there. Perfect. This is the first time I don't have someone in sales currently, but I loved your journey. Also, you made a comment about my post, which I did not like, and I took offense. No. So we'll discuss that. But before we get started, who are you? What do you do? And where are you today?
Yes, thanks. I guess I also need to pronounce your name. Is it Ramsey or Ramsey?
Well, it doesn't matter. My name is Ramsey. No one knows
Ramsey.
Yeah.
Okay, Ramsey. Okay, yes, thanks, Ramsey. I appreciate you bringing me on. So my name is Wes. I am primarily a cybersecurity professional. I was in the Air Force for 4 years, serving as a cyberspace operations officer. And then after that, I left the Air Force, joined the California Air National Guard to continue service part-time, and then worked at Palo Alto Networks as a sales engineer for 2 years. So I was on the OEM side, and then decided that I wanted to try my hand at the VAR world. So worked at Colossal LLC for about a year. And now I'm mostly going to school, looking at some other opportunities, basically between jobs, trying to figure out what to do next. But still primarily a sales engineer at heart. And I really think that my time in the military benefited my ability to be a sales engineer. My sales engineer job, probably even more so, helped me be a better officer in the Air National Guard.
Can we dig into that a little bit more? Why did they help each other get better at both, I guess?
Yes, no, that's a great question. So as an officer, you're often expected to be able to do things that you would do as a sales engineer, right? Present, be able to talk to people at different levels. You have to be able to talk to engineers who get things done, as well as executives who are thinking more about business and high level impacts. They're not thinking about, as some people in the military would say, beeps and squeaks, but that's like the technical minutia of whatever problem you're trying to solve. And also there's a really big political, maybe not be the right word, but definitely relationship aspect to being an officer in the military, just like there is being in sales, that you need to be able to quickly build relationships with people. And on the sales side, right, the OEMs try to maintain relationship with the VARs and vice versa, but then also the customers as well. So relationships with people who are kind of force multipliers for you, but also the people that you need to be helping, because in the military, it's a lot of different moving parts. So everyone's got to do something for someone else. And so it's, sometimes it does feel like there's customer service type things going on within the military.
Like beeps and squeaks. We had a VP of sales always used to say, I don't care about the labor, just show me the baby.
That's funny.
It's kind of similar, which, if anyone who's been through labor knows that that's just nuts. Anyways,
Well, I
I haven't,
haven't.
I haven't been through labor either, but my wife has, and I was there, and no, she wants to talk about the labor. So you also mentioned the term force multiplier, which I hear a lot, eh, but we don't talk about it a lot. Like another term could be leveraging. But what
Right.
do you mean by force multiplier, and how did you like what was it like at at the army or air force, and how were you able to use the force multipliers?
Right. So I've had a couple different roles in the Air Force. One, I was leading a engineering and acquisition effort, and so we were focused on security operations for the Space Force. And really, the kind of the challenge there was implementing what we were uh, putting together across all the different space systems um, within the U.S. What became the U.S. Space Force. When I joined, it was Air Force Space Command, and getting people's buy-in to allow us to add additional cybersecurity equipment onto their space systems was a challenge, and being able to build allies, right? Same thing that you do in sales, right? So we talk about in sales force multipliers with, for instance, OEMs, right? Use resellers as force multipliers, or allies who are customers, right? If you find that one customer that loves your company, right? At Palo Alto, there's customers who are just, they love Palo Alto, and I'm sure all the cybersecurity companies are the same way. There's that one guy at the or guy or woman at the customer who just really loves that company, and being able to get that person to advocate for you within the company is how we use them in as a sales engineer. Um, and it was really helpful in the military as well to be able to find those people, someone who works within that specific space system. Hey, we want to be able to add additional monitoring to your space system to improve cyber operations, and getting them to advocate to allow that to happen, to get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy. That's a huge thing in the DoD. I'm sure the Department of Defense, as I'm sure everyone knows, the U.S. government is a very bureaucratic organization. So getting people to advocate for you helps you get rid of a lot of bureaucracy. So it's a very similar skill, and you have to be able to find those people who are your allies and be able to leverage them to advocate on your behalf.
Right.
Mhm.
So basically leveraging other people to actually help them do the job, right? So help them be
Right.
successful and help yourself be successful. Does that sound about right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. I mean, then you moved out of like Army National Guard, and you went in as you became a sales engineer. Why did you make the decision to go into sales engineering specifically?
So I had sales engineers. I still have the sales engineers that were selling to me back when I was in the Space Force. I just met with one, Ross Adams. He was my sales engineer covering the Space Force, and now he's moved into the rep role. So he's decided to become a rep. And but really, yeah, shaking your head. So yeah, we always say that they go to the dark side. I literally texted him. I was like, "Dude, you went to the dark side?
I'm
How
there.
dare you?"
I can't really mock him. I didn't choose to be here, but I'm here.
And then and then really my first one of my first bosses, not my first one, but one of my first bosses was also my sales engineer from Palo. So his name is Dave Belinsky, who also became a rep at Juniper. But he was just someone I really admired and wanted to be like. And so that was that was just really the driving factor, was just especially Dave Belinsky, but also others, sales engineers that I worked with. I really saw how effective they were at presenting. They had a lot of the qualities that I wanted to have, how effectively they could build relationships. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go do the sales engineer thing, because these guys are really smart, but also very well spoken. And that's what I want to be.
You mentioned one of them, former boss that you admired and you wanted to emulate. What did you admire about him, and what were you able to emulate?
Right. So he just really understood complex concepts and could just explain them. I think he was very good at speaking to his audience. I think that's something that we talked a lot about when I was in the Air Force, was quickly determining what things your audience wants to hear and being able to speak to those things. And it's very difficult. I think it's a concept that's mentioned a lot, but people are still not very good at it. It's easy to kind of have a script, and I do this still even to this day. I have a script that sometimes I default to, rather than being able to dynamically update sort of the information that I'm conveying at whatever level, or using whatever words the person I'm speaking to actually wants to hear. But he was really good at that. And then he also was he did his homework, so he got to the point where he could be confident in what he said because he was very knowledgeable. And I think that confidence that he put out there was very, it made a lot of people around him respect him, but he wasn't overconfident. He didn't have this confidence where he just came off as arrogant. He was confident, and he was able to back it up based on all the homework that he did. Everything that he said he was confident in, and that was because he took the time and spent the energy knowing his craft very well.
Okay. That was like in May 2021 where you switched into sales engineering. How was your path? Like getting the interviews, going through the interviews. How was it laid out for you? Did you find it hard, easy? Any information you can provide about that topic, that would be great.
Right. No, that's great. So for any military members or anybody who wants to get into sales engineering, definitely the trope that everyone says is true, which is networking is going to be the most important step. That was what was helpful for me, that I had worked with various people and had indicated to them an interest in getting into the field. And so one sales rep in particular advocated for me within the company, and that was helpful. It was it was something that I didn't really think I was qualified for at the time. And I was applying for more customer type roles, like being a customer at a security operations center roles, when I was leaving the military, because that's all I thought I was qualified for. And that is a challenge. A lot of, maybe your companies like this, a lot of companies, when they hire sales engineers, they want someone who has been a sales engineer, right? And so sometimes getting that entry level experience without going through some kind of academy program that they have set up. Like I know Cisco and Palo Alto, for example, both have academy programs for new sales engineers. I didn't think that I could get hired without going through an academy program like that, but I was able to. And I think just building relationships and people seeing that I had the potential to do it was how I was able to do that. It was the most intense interview process of all the other companies I had looked at, which made sense because it was, it paid a lot better, and the requirements were just very different, because it requires you can't just come in and do your job, right? You have to take initiative and excel as a sales engineer. So it made sense that they really wanted to do all the extra interviews, the extra vetting, etc. So it was challenging, for sure. And I was surprised that they even considered me for the position, and much more surprised when I was, chosen for that job.
Why did you think you weren't qualified for the role?
Because and maybe this is just me not understanding, not at the time not understanding online job postings, but because most online job postings, the amount of requirements that they listed were just way beyond anything that I had. But I've since heard and been told and seen that sometimes those job requirements are a bit of this is what the ideal candidate would look like,
It's a wish
and
list.
not necessarily right. It's a wish list, not really what a realistic candidate would look like.
So one thing that's standing out to me, like it seems that you had some doubt, right? And one of the things that sales engineer leaders or sales teams look for is confidence. I'm assuming you were able to show confidence in the interview. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
Yes, I think I was, but I was also able to accurately say when I didn't understand things. Um, so there were certain topics related to, for example, specifically Palo Alto firewalls that I had no experience with and didn't understand going in the interview. So I was very upfront with that. I said, I don't understand this. I don't have this background. And I think they appreciated that as well. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that with sales engineers. You don't want the person who's overconfident who pretends like they know the answer to things, and then they say something wrong, or maybe they say that there's some feature that exists that doesn't exist, and then the customer expects that.
Yep.
So I'm definitely a fan of confidence. Like I mentioned, Dave Belinsky had a confidence that I wanted to emulate, but it's also, I think some people overemphasize confidence, where it's, oh, you need to be confident and et cetera, and then you get these people who are it's called the MSU, which is make something up.
Yeah. But I wanted to go back to like the confidence thing.
Right.
Did you have a process? Like, did you get into the zone before you get into the call? How were you able to convey that confidence, not cockiness, the confidence?
Right. No, that's a good question. I don't have a we get into the zone. I don't listen to All I Do Is Win by DJ Khaled before before a call or something like that. But I do think sometimes it's just helpful for me to remind myself that, the other person I'm talking to is just another human being, and the worst that could happen in that case is I don't get the job, and there's other job opportunities. I had other job opportunities, so some of that is also just the nature of being in cybersecurity right now. If you have some experience, you can get a job. So I think I wasn't super afraid that, oh, if I don't get this job, I'm going to live under a bridge. And sometimes when I've had those fears in the past, like sometimes when I have those fears, it's harder to be confident because you get stressed out. So it's definitely helpful to relax and remind yourself it's going to be okay. If this doesn't work out, then, I'll find something else. And that just makes it easier to the conversation to flow.
Okay. And one thing else that you mentioned was you got a referral from a salesperson. A lot of people,
Right.
I wanted to point it out because most people go after other SEs to get referrals. But salespeople have good salespeople have a very good reputation. And a lot of salespeople wouldn't refer you if they didn't trust you or didn't like you. So just want to bring that out there. So if you work at a network,
Right.
also network with salespeople.
And he even advocated for a salary increase for him. He helped negotiate my salary up. He was very helpful. So that's the
Nice.
yes. And salespeople know how to negotiate. They know all those great skills. So if you can get a salesperson on your side, that's a good way to go.
Yeah. Are you thinking about going to the dark side at any point? No.
But potentially, it is something I've considered for sure.
Okay. Okay. And so you worked also with the federal government. So you basically left and you became a vendor to your own, like to your old self. Is that?
Yes, exactly, and that's also helpful. I think a lot of companies like to hire from within the general customer base,
Yeah.
Especially if they're hiring a sales engineer with no prior experience as a sales engineer.
Yep.
Maybe you call that entry level. It's not like you're an entry level professional, but maybe an entry level sales engineer. So it's helpful to understand the customer and what their mission is, what the business they do entails.
And entry level sales engineer is still better than most. Like gets paid better than most other entry level or intermediate level jobs. So
right.
So now that you switched from the customer to the vendor, what was there? Did you have any aha moments about like when you were on the other side looking in? It's like, oh, why are they doing this? Did you understand more about the like about the buying cycle and the sales cycle from being a salesperson SE?
That's a good question. I think I understood a lot about the sales cycle. I think one thing that was really eye-opening was the VAR relationship. I think that was one thing I didn't understand at all, being a customer. We had a VAR, and the VAR just kind of showed up, and that was our VAR, and this was the product we wanted. I don't think that, like, as a customer, we really understood why we're working with that VAR. And that might be unique to the federal government. I have a friend who works in a private sector company, deals a lot with procurements, and she knows her VAR very well because she relies on them to be a consultant and design solutions, multi-vendor solutions, right? So maybe in the private sector, people are a lot more familiar with who their VAR was, but in the federal government, we understood a lot the purchase cycle, fiscal years, because we understood that they had a fiscal year, we had a fiscal year, fiscal quarters, because and I do have a comment to make on this actually. But before I say that, I just think the VAR thing was very interesting to me, like the whole deal with like margins and getting various discounts and VAR partner status and all that kind of stuff was something that I just had no idea of on the other side and was mind blowing. But one thing that was kind of eye opening, or a bit of a light bulb moment. So when I worked in federal acquisitions, so people probably know, right, that you pay taxes and the Congress approves a budget and every federal agency gets their budget and they have to spend the money on that budget. So we had the program executive officer at the time. It was General Thompson, and he so every quarter he would have a meeting, just like you would have a QBR. It was a QBR type meeting by the program executive officer, who's basically the CEO of this organization that has to spend a certain amount of money. And he would have their O's and E's, which in the federal government stands for obligations and expenditures. So it's like, here's the amount of money that you've obligated and here's the amount of money that you expended, right? So it was funny to go to a QBR and see that inverted, right? Rather than here's the amount of money you spent, it's like here's the amount of money you made, right? So it was like, oh, we're not here to spend money. Like it's like I went from being there to spend money. Part of one of my goals was to spend all the money that I was assigned to me every year to, oh, now I've got a quota and I've got to make I've got to make this amount of money this year. So it's just funny to see that like flipped on its head when Dana Barnes, our VP of public sector for Palo Alto, would have the QBR. It was just replace a person and like flip the numbers. This is kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, I think like sales and procurement are two sides of the same coin, right? They have budget.
Exactly.
We have a quota, right? They can't overspend. If we don't make quota, we're not doing our job. So it's good that you saw that from the other end. How did that help you in your job as an SE, if at all?
It does help. I mean, I think everyone in federal government sales knows about the sort of buying cycle, the federal government's buying cycle. The federal government's fiscal year ends at the end of September, so the first day of the fiscal year was recently, actually, last month, October 1st. And so because everybody's trying to spend everything by the end of September, you're calling up your customers in the summer, asking them, is there any money that you need to spend, anything you need to obligate? But I think what's helpful with the experience on procurement is knowing some of the additional details, because it's one thing to call your customers and say, hey, do you need to spend any money, right? But it's another thing to know. So for instance, we had a UFOR process, an unfunded request within the Space Force, and there was a very specific way to put together a proposal. And vendors can actually, they can help customers put together those proposals. And then, so if you find a customer that's really interested, so going back to, what was it? Leveraging relationships, right? Leveraging your existing relationships and force multiplying. If you can say you have someone who's an ally, you can work with them to put together that unfunded request, make sure that it's a built out solution. It's not, a half-baked solution, or it's not just them buying just some hardware that's going to sit on the shelf. It's actually, a fully baked solution, and they understand the outcomes. That's the job as, our job as a sales engineer, to turn features into outcomes, right? And for them to then be able to pass that UFOR, that unfunded request, to someone who has money in the summer when they need to spend it. And then that person who has money, if they have some kind of, they had a budget of, I don't know, 5 million, and they've only been able to spend 4 of it, and they're not sure how they're going to spend the other million. If they have a nicely, well thought out, well put together unfunded request, then they're much more likely to spend it on that than sort of a half-baked solution from somewhere else.
Right. So that's kind of like the buyer enablement from the government side, right? And so again, you're talking about partnering with customers, becoming a trusted. They trust you to actually build a non-half-baked solution. And
100%.
One thing you mentioned is also like you went from vendor to a value-added reseller, which is what VAR stands for. We said it a few times. I didn't explain it yet. So value-added reseller. Why did you make that switch?
So I wanted to learn some other technologies, some other OEMs technologies, and I thought that the VAR space was the best place to do that. And it was it was a fire hose. I learned a ton at Colossal, and it's a small company. It's a service disabled veteran owned small business, so that means that it has less than 150 employees, and at the same time, they have really strong partnerships with Cisco, the big networking companies, Cisco, Aruba, and Juniper, for example, as well as Palo Alto, VMware, Red Hat. I mean, I could just list off tons of IT OEMs,
Yeah,
and they're
basically all networking OEMs.
right. And
What's
so,
OEM
but it's a
stand for, by the
small.
way?
Oh, sorry, original equipment manufacturer.
No need to apologize.
The
Because I say it all the time and I never think about what it actually means. So
Right. Yeah, no, it's a good point on this. We should definitely it's so easy for me just to slip into acronyms like VAR and OEM and UFR, and it's like, okay, I need to slow
okay,
down and
what is
explain
you for?
stuff. The unfunded request that I mentioned
Okay.
earlier.
So that's a
Uh,
government thing, not an SE thing, right?
that's a government thing, yeah. Even SE at the beginning, I was like, maybe I should say sales engineer instead of SE, but that's funny. But yeah, as far as the VAR thing goes, it was just so many different technologies, and because it's a small company, it's 100 less than 150 people. Um, as the engineers, there's a lot of pressure on us to really know lots of different technologies and know them well, and then be able to build those OEM relationships with several different OEM SEs.
Okay. All right. You mentioned it was like learning from the fire hose. I find when people like have way too much to learn, they end up being superficial and everything. Um,
Mhm.
so did you feel like out of VAR you had a like more holistic view, but it was shallower, or did you feel like you learned as much as you needed to learn?
It was shallower. I mean, you're right. Like, there's only so much time in the day and so much energy. You can only learn so many things, and that was where learning force multiplying, getting the relationships to where um, if you can explain something at a super, to use your words, a superficial enough level of detail, but maybe enough detail to get a customer interested, and then get the OEM involved, so that they can participate. I did try to. I've always tried to do I don't know if you've heard of like the T-shaped um, like expertise, where you're like a mile wide and an inch
Yeah.
deep in like a lot of different things, but then you've also got like one area that you kind of go deeper
Yeah.
into. And so for me, that was security. So for VMware was where I learned a lot of additional stuff with their security capabilities, both with their NSX firewall as well as VMware Carbon Black. So I was able to go into, and that's just one example, but I was able to go a little bit more into VMware, and then obviously maintain my Palo proficiency to kind of get that deeper knowledge within a specific area and security, but then also kind of keep that high level knowledge so that I could do all the other parts of my job across the hundreds of OEMs.
If you were to recommend one for someone like brand new who wants to become an SE brand new, is there a preference? Does it really matter? Which would you prefer?
One what? Sorry.
Like VAR, sorry, the value added reseller, a VAR, or an OEM? Which would be better for someone who's trying to get into sales engineering?
Um, I think I think OEM would be. I mean, I guess that's the way that I did it. I know people who have gone the other way and they've done really well. They started off at VARs and then gone into OEMs. I know a lot of people who have done services at a VAR, and then they go into pre-sales at the VAR, and then they go into an OEM. But I think for the way that I did it, and the reason I'm kind of recommending the way that I did it was helpful, just because I did have that focused product set that I was able to focus on. And at Palo Alto, for example, and I think it's like this at other companies, you have as a core, they call it a core SE, you have your primary product that you have to focus on, product or products, and then you have other resources for the other products. And so it just makes it so you can really get to know something really well, and you can kind of prove your ability as a seller, a presenter, etc. Before you, like you said, kind of are like attacked by the fire hose and getting inundated, learning everything superficially. So I think that was a nice, in my personal experience, that was a nice stepping stone. And it was helpful to have worked with the products on the customer side as well. So I had a little bit of the background going into it.
Maybe there's also a misconception that the OEMs pay more than VARs. Is that your experience as well?
No, from the jobs that I've seen similar salaries across the two, at least on the federal sales side. I've seen some VARs on the rep side, the like the actual salesperson side. I've seen some VARs where the VARs are doing very well. They're making a lot of commission off of the actual sales. The salespeople are actually making a lot of commission off the actual sales as well.
Nice.
So.
All right. I also wanted to talk about like the LinkedIn post that I had.
Okay.
I don't know if you still remember it, but basically I was saying like
Yes, of course.
new SEs join, for those listening, new SEs join a company and are never told how to do the job. They might be told what to sell, who they work with, who to sell, but the how-to part is left a mystery. I say a bunch of stuff, and your response was, "Do you want to tell them specifically how to do it?" Yes. I have seen some. Your response still. I have seen some companies try to turn SEs into a canned activity, which ruined the creativity and charisma of the SE. Suddenly, sales engagement went from interesting conversation where you solve a problem to a set of canned pitches, demos, and workshops. All right, let's elaborate a little bit. When you were trained, when you became an SE, was there anyone to like? What was the training that you received?
Yeah, so we had video like CBT type, like computer-based training type training, and also like a 1 week online boot camp.
Okay.
But in my personal experience, I didn't really get a lot out of that kind of organized training.
Yep.
I learned most of what I learned was on my own time, and when I was able to get access to the technology in a way that I could play with it, build some things on my own, use it the way that a customer would, that was the most valuable for me. And I also would avoid using, I personally avoided using the kind of canned demo or workshop environments. And I built a lot of my own, and I was given the latitude to do that. And that's what I really liked about my first employer, my first SE employer, was they gave me kind of all these different tools that I could just do stuff on my own. And, but I think what was really helpful, and I think kind of what you were commenting on in your post, which I 100% agree with, was my first boss, Bruce Marco, was he saw his role as like a mentor, right? Like he was someone that we would meet, and he would ask me how my deals were going, how my different presentations had gone, and he would give me that feedback and provide me some brainstorming, etc. But what I really liked about him, and where I kind of wanted to add some caveats to your specific post, was he never told me exactly how to do anything. He never said like, "Oh, this is the best way," or "You have to use this tool," or this, canned demo. He would let me apply some of my own creativity. And I went to a couple conferences, wearing my, I don't know if this is video, but I'm wearing my AFCEA polo here. I went to a couple AFCEA, Armed Forces Communications Electronics Association, which puts on a lot of conference for Department of Defense organizations and sales engineers. You'll see a lot of sales engineers at those conferences. And whenever I put on those things, I built the entire environment for the workshop or lesson that I would have at those conferences. And that's the way that I like to do it. And that I think it was better, but also just, 100% selfishly, it made me more motivated because it was my ability to actually own something rather than just repeat something that someone else had built.
Right. Well, okay. So here's my counter to that. Did you play any sports?
Yes.
What sport?
So I've played basketball, track, and cross country.
Basketball, track, and cross
Yep.
country. So in basketball, did they teach you the basic rules?
Yes.
Did they teach you the form to shoot?
Yes.
Okay. Did they have like tactics or game plans to follow?
Yeah.
Were you allowed to be creative within that?
Yes.
Right? So that's exactly the same thing. What I meant by that was, let's show people how to demo. If they don't like,
Right.
if they don't know the basics of a demo, it doesn't matter how creative they are. They might be creative in the wrong box.
Right.
So that's what I meant. Like, yeah, this is how we do demo. This is what we need to show. How you go about it, how you talk, the jokes that you make, right? You can improve it, right? Steph Curry improves the plans that he gets, but it doesn't mean. I feel like you have to know the basics in order to get creative, and you can't be creative if you don't know the basics. Doesn't make sense.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you, and I think the sports is an interesting analogy because I've heard people um, talk a lot about sports in that sometimes people overuse the sports analogy, I think, because in
Really.
sports like the yeah
Thank
the like a lot of the rules are the same over a long period of time
you.
versus in business, for example, when I was at Palo Alto, it's like they're acquiring a new company every few months, right? And so the things that you have to be able to talk to a customer about or demo a
Yeah.
customer, the software is constantly changing.
Yep.
Like you have to be able to like adapt to that. Um, and so it's almost like the rules are changing within business, and I'm sure that's within your job, unlike within sports where the rules change every now and then. I think American football has had a few pretty famous changes over the last couple decades, but a lot of the rules are staying the same. And so that's kind of where, again, I don't disagree with your post.
Yeah.
Just as far as the caveat, I think it's important to remember that um, if a company tries too hard to make everything scripted, I think every company has seen this, right? Where seen this with marketing, right? It's like, okay, here's the scripted email that you're just going to send to like all your customers, or here's the scripted LinkedIn back and forth that you're going to do,
Yeah.
and it's very unnatural, and it doesn't help sales, right? It just makes the company annoying.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like, um, you know, we if we go back to the sports analogy, sure, the rules are changing, but I also think of like the manager as the coach. If you have a coach that doesn't allow anyone to do anything outside of what they want them to do, everybody will be unhappy and you'll get a lot of churn. Right? Whereas if the coach just provides guidance, like this is the game plan, but if you're open for a shot, take the damn shot, right? Don't don't try to belabor it. So yeah, like I agree. There's
Right.
I think there's a basic set of rules, but my the reason I brought this up, one of the reasons, is I was just talking to a brand new SE, and he has no idea if he's doing things right or wrong, which reminded me of myself when I became an SE. It took me a year and a half to know that I'm doing things wrong.
Mm.
I was very creative doing the spray and pray. I made jokes all the time, right? But it was still pray and pray, if that makes sense. Are you familiar with the spray and pray methodology?
Does that show up and throw up?
Yeah, same thing.
That was mentioned to me early on, and it's funny that you mentioned the coach. I've noticed some of the same issues. There's obviously the SEM, but there's also the account manager, I think, or account executive, whatever term the respective organization uses. Um, but that person I think, also needs to let the SE be a little bit creative, and you involve the SE in the process and make sure that the way that the SE is going to do something is the way that they're comfortable doing it. Like you said, there's the rules and there's the methodologies, but we're all going to be kind of creative in our own way. Like Steph Curry doesn't play the same way as I know this is probably a terrible analogy for Kevin Durant. I don't know. That's a bad analogy. They don't play the same position. But anyway, point is that everybody does those things their own way, and you can't force them to do it a different way. You've got to let them hone their craft in the way that they're going to shine in, and that's going to be best for you and your customers as an account rep. And I have worked with account reps who, they have a specific way that they want the presentation to appear in front of the customer, and they kind of very much dictate to the SC, like, this is how you're going to do it, and
Yep.
And they maintain the strategy themselves. And I think that's actually where I personally have been more frustrated in the past, and where kind of my comment, like, energy was coming from, was that specific scenario.
Yeah.
And so, but to your point, I was very lucky. My the first account rep that I worked with at Palo Alto, and my manager, my SEM, were both very good at providing me feedback. And also, I was seeking it as well. So I would recommend new SEs seek it, because account managers they're friendly people. They're not the type of people to tell, I mean, some of them are, but a lot of them are, they want to be liked, and they're very friendly. They're the popular kids in school.
Yep.
So you have to push them to give you feedback, and give you, constructive feedback, not just the feedback is, oh, you did great, right? What is the constructive feedback? What could I have done better?
Well, I would advise that you tell them you're going to ask them for feedback before you jump into the call or go into the meeting room, because almost
Right.
nobody pays attention if you ask them after the fact. But also, the one thing I would add is ask multiple people for feedback, because I asked my salesperson for feedback for the first year and a half, and he said I'm doing great.
Right.
But we were spraying and praying. We're showing up and throwing up. Right. So, and I was in a situation where I was the only SE in my territory. There was nobody else to watch me. So that didn't help. But yeah, I pretty much, I think we're in agreement in terms of show them how to do it, and then give them the freedom to be creative within the rule set. And if you have a salesperson that's annoying, build that relationship so that they'll let you do what they'll let you improve their process.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, Wes, it's time to move on to the not so fire round. These are the same 4 questions I ask almost every guest. And
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard this before. Hopefully you have, or hopefully you haven't. So I don't know. I don't know which one.
Which one do you hope?
I like candid answers, I guess. So question number 1: what is it that you loved about sales engineering while you were doing it?
I love the relationships that I built with customers and other VARs. I think for me, that was the number one thing that I loved.
Nice. All right. Just so you know, this is the not so fire round, so you can take your time. Anyway.
Okay, gotcha. I thought I was supposed to
throw it in there.
I missed it. I read it, listened to it opposite. I gotta get, as a sales engineer, I should be a better listener, right?
Well, I guess I need to set the expectation better, because nobody asks the not so fire round. Everything is fire round. Anyways, question number 2: what would you consider is your superpower?
My superpower. I was asked this question recently. I think I'm fearless. I think that's what I would say my superpower is. I'm not afraid to, write salacious comments on LinkedIn. I'm not afraid to reach out to people I don't know, cold call, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but I just, social stuff that bothers other people, I just get over it.
Okay, cool. Well, I can tell. Our conversation was, you want to be on the podcast? No. Our conversation was, I connected with you. You said, hey, can I be on your podcast? I'm like, sure. I think that was it. Like, hey, I thanked you for commenting on my post. Can I be on your podcast? I mean, you wrote a big, nice email, but the gist is, can I be on your podcast? And my response was like, hey, yeah, why not? So I love that. All right, question.
And if you would have said no, I would have just gotten over it, because I don't know what it is, man. I just learned to get over it.
Yeah, how can I say though? Like, you just commented. Like, you're familiar with what's Gary Vee is like, jab, 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 cross. I mean,
yes,
you just
yep.
jabbed, right? You just jabbed, and you commented on my thing, and then you jabbed again when you sent that nice email, and then you crossed right away. I mean, sure, maybe it was a little too fast, but you still crossed, and it worked out. Okay, so question number 3: Is there a resource you'd recommend for anyone who wants to improve as a sales engineer?
Yes, my I read this book every year. Never Split the Difference by Chris
Chris,
Voss. Have you read that one?
yep.
Uh, that's that's just such a good book for actively listening, being able to convince people to like you and listen to you by listening to them first. And obviously he has a lot of other great advice there. I use every tool in that book that he has, and I
Yeah,
read that book every year.
it's a very good
It's
book.
also just a great read because he talks about all these cool stories about when he was at the FBI doing hostage negotiations. So it's like
Philippines
it's a
and
book you just like can't put down.
yeah. Another nice book based on what you're saying is like how to win friends and how to win friends and influence people. It's in the same vein. I don't think it has as many tactics for negotiation, but it basically says if you want people to like you, like them first, or if you want to be interesting, be interested. So that's the gist of it. All right. Question number 4: is there a habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
A habit. That's a good question. I think focus is that's a good one that I'm working on. That one it seems like it comes in waves. Like I get better at it and I don't. So people might be wondering what I mean by focus. We live in a distracted world, right? It's easy for me to be having a conversation with a friend and I'm trying to text at the same time, or I'm trying to write an important email or paper, and at the same time I've got LinkedIn open. So being able to focus, and that really does just bring back to my both my professional and personal life, because when working with people, um, when I'm sitting here talking to you, I need to be focused on this conversation. I need to be listening to everything that you're saying. When I'm talking with a customer, I need to be focused on that conversation and what they want and what their needs are. I mean, Chris Voss even talks about how we have like 5 conversations going on in our head. And the last thing you need to do is, multiply that by even more by trying to do multiple things at once. So for me, just trying to focus on the task at hand and not get distracted, not allow myself to try to do lots of different things is a habit that I'm really trying to focus on or trying to improve. And it really has, the more when am doing well at that, I see it benefit all areas of my life.
That's a good habit. Um, yeah, I mean, I didn't get distracted at all when my wife was yelling right outside my door at my son. Okay, Wes, we're at the end of the show. Was there any questions you were hoping I was going to ask you that I did not?
No, I think this was a really great interview format. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for creating a little debate about the about the kind of the initial like feedback, and how a SE knows what they're doing a good job or not. I think that's a really important discussion. So thanks for all the work that you're doing to improve what SEs are doing, and creating this podcast and being active on LinkedIn. I think that's really helpful to all sales engineers as well as customers or anybody who wants to become a sales engineer in the future. So thanks for all the work you're doing, and this is a great show. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Can my audience help you with anything? And where can they connect with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. That would be the best place. They can follow me on YouTube. I think right now, just if anybody, especially if you're interested in cybersecurity, just continue to follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I post. I post everything, all the articles I write, all the demo videos that I do. It's all on there. So that would be the best way to help me now. Is just if you want to, then just follow my stuff and provide me feedback. I'm Ramzi knows I'm not afraid to provide comments, like if I don't agree. So feel free to do the same to me. If you think that something I write is dumb or my video doesn't make any sense, then throw a comment in there, and that helps me improve my craft.
Yeah, only mean comments for the next 24 hours.
Go for it. I'm all ears.
Well, I appreciate your time, Wes, and I hope to talk to you soon. And that brings us to the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Wesley, for coming on. I really appreciate it. What is your takeaway? Have you as a sales engineer ever worked with procurement? I am very curious about that. I never had to until I went into sales, and that's a different animal altogether. Which, as I mentioned, I don't like doing, right? Because when you're talking to procurement, now it's a numbers game, not a problem solving game. So that's my 2 cents. But we did talk a lot about many different things from VAR to OEM, and I hope you listened to what those two mean during the show. But that's it. That's it for me. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something out of it. And I will see you next time. With that, I'm signing off.